let's get into this, guys. So we got a caller asks Ben Shapiro, what is this conservative solution to the student loan debt crisis? Death crisis. Debt crisis, you silly goose. Obviously, the progressive solution seems to be make it free and eliminate the debt and implement the Wall Street tax. I have a bit of an issue with that overall because, like, my thing is I understand that we have a debt crisis and it's very crippling for a lot of young people, and we should do something about it. But there also should be accountability for your actions, no? So, like, my thing is, and, like, I'm a very big fan of Andrew Yang. I heard his idea, a rough draft of it. It was very good. His idea was to buy up the debt, and let everybody implement a 10 for 10 program, which is where you pay 10% of your income for 10 years, and if you pay it off, then great. If you don't pay it off, then it's absolved. And then what we do is we lower the prices of schools by making sure that we regulate the subsidies we give to these schools. We give so much money to schools. You think about it, like when you go to like a school that gets, I think most or all schools get some kind of subsidy from the federal government and the state government. And then, the more subsidies we give them, the more money they just charge. So if we get them to actually all get into some kind of a cost line, apparently most of it comes from administrative costs, we could lower the pricing of schools. And that makes sense to me. It's kind of like a soft reset. There's still accountability. Beautiful idea, nice and easy, but it also relieves the student loan debt crisis. That's where I stand. So let's see what the conservative one is, because nobody is saying anything other than, like, who cares? So let's see what we have to say here.
Welcome back. This is the Ben Shapiro Show. We are taking your calls at 855-236-3228, 855-236-3228. Billy and Ken.
Maybe I should do that. I should get a phone number. Hey, guys, call my personal cell, and then we'll talk about attractive, short Jewish men.
Since you're on the Ben Shapiro Show, go for it, Billy.
Oh, hello, Ben. Hey, I want to say I'm a big fan of yours. I've been listening to you for about 3 years now.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
The work you do. Yeah. Even though
I think he really appreciates it. I think he's just like, ugh, I hear this all the time. I get it, bro. Just ask me a goddamn question. He wouldn't say that. He's religious.
I'm on the left on some major issues.
Well, first of all, thank you. Honestly, thank you for listening, even though you disagree. Like, I think that's really an important thing for the country. It's why I always urge people to listen on the right, to listen to some left-wing shows too. So I appreciate that.
Yeah.
Well, where's my shout out, Ben Shapiro? I've been doing this for like a month, and you never even said anything to me. Basically, a veteran.
Yeah, I agree with that too. My question for you today is, what is the conservative solution to the student debt crisis? So, as you know, right now there's a whole generation of people, millennials like us, who are brainwashed into thinking that college is a pathway to success, when in actuality there's only a few worthwhile majors, in my opinion, to get into. With the debt at $1.5 trillion.
So, like, just before we get into that, he brought up a very good point, and that's the fact that, like, a lot of kids are urged to just go to school and pursue some career. We don't have enough guidance in America to kids to go into something that they like. The way I'd like to see us handle things is advocate for you pursuing your dreams regardless of what it is, generally as long as it's practical. But also say, hey, these are good fields to get into. We need these jobs. We need a lot of trade jobs. We need more people to do this, this, and this. And try to direct kids into jobs. Because we have this fantasy idea that we push onto kids. And I was a victim of it as well. Where, like, if you're going to find your dream job, guys. That's the idea. But you're not. There's no such thing for most people. And it puts this bizarre, unrealistic expectation on everybody. To, like, find their dream job, and they feel like crap about it when they can't find it. And it, like, really messes kids up. And what you guys need to wrap your heads around is, like, find something you can tolerate, that you're good at, that pays well enough for you to have quality of life. Because if you kind of like it, you don't have to love your job. If you kind of like it, even if you're neutral on it, and it pays, you're going to come home and you're going to be happy. You're going to be able to do whatever you want. Most problems stem from lack of money. I'm telling you right now, that's a reality of the situation. So we do need to redirect people into the right ways. And that's what he touched on, though it's not necessarily relevant to the question.
It's crippling our generation and might cripple the economy in general in the future, as millennials are forgoing or delaying things like home ownership, getting married, starting a family, starting new businesses, and etc. I know you believe in, all those things being a good thing. What is the conservative solution to our ballooning crisis?
Okay, well, I don't think that the solution is as...
How do you think he gets that panning camera? I want it.
Democrats and some Republicans have suggested that the taxpayers ought to pick up the bill. I don't think that it's my responsibility. I paid off my students.
Not for nothing, but that's not really what anybody's saying. Most people are talking about Wall Street taking a hit, and whether I agree, I can kind of agree to an extent. We need to keep in mind that we bailed Wall Street out so heavily, especially during the Great Recession in 2008. That why shouldn't they pay something back? God forbid. You know what I mean? So, yeah. But it's not really the taxpayer. This is kind of intentionally misrepresenting where the money would come from to force a particular narrative. Or he just doesn't know that, and I doubt that. He's a very intelligent man.
Debt. I don't think it's my responsibility to pick up somebody else's student debt. I particularly don't think it's somebody's responsibility who never went to college to pick up somebody else's student
right,
debt.
Again, we've established.
I think that there are really two questions with regard to the student
better.
debt crisis. One is on a going forward basis, and one is what do we do with the people who already have student debt. So let's handle the second one first, or rather the first one first, because on a going forward basis, the answer is that there are a few different things that have been proposed. One is that you could basically say to colleges, not through the legislature, but simply through students saying this, that we are not going to go to college unless you effectively guarantee us a certain level of income coming out. Right? There's no point in me spending this much money unless I think there's a very good shot that coming out I'm going to have this income. And
that's bizarre language. If I had to extract a point out of that, what are they supposed to do? They're supposed to I'm assuming this would be a good idea. Are they supposed to be very specific and detailed about how much money you would get after you get the degree? That's a great idea. But that doesn't necessarily guarantee you the income. It's not a terrible idea. I think Trump was trying to implement something that would be more transparent for schools, which is a good idea.
There have been proposals on a legislative level to make colleges liable for false marketing if they suggest that you're going to be able to make a certain amount of money coming out of college and you're not actually able to make that amount of money coming out of college. I'm not supremely warm to that proposal, but I'm also not cold to that proposal.
What I would like to say, is that he suggested just before this idea of people just being just don't go to college, and that's a lot of times that's a capitalist solution. That's a solution to capitalism. It's just don't consume this product. The problem is that there, if you want to get a decent job, usually you have to go to college, and people aren't just going to be let's all just stop going. What are they just going to freeze their lives? It's kind of an impractical thing to just say, people, stop consuming that college. What are you going to go to? No, you're going to go to another one, and then you're not going to be able to get into it. And then you're just going to end up having to go to whatever college that you can get into. So it's not really a good solution to just be just don't go to that college until they lower the price. It's just not going to happen, honestly.
I think it would take some pretty specific legislative line drawing to do something like that. Beyond that, I think that employers generally have to stop screening employees for college education. We don't do it at the Daily Wire. Right? The Daily Wire, my business partner, didn't graduate from college, and so we've had a proposal since the beginning, a policy.
That's an okay idea, but what his solution is to just stop taking people from college. That's bizarre. Generally speaking, businesses increase the requirement for a particular job because it's so saturated. If anything, you'd want to redirect people out of there. It's why you need a master's degree in social work just to make $40,000 a year. And it's why you only need an associate's degree and a computer science degree to make $40,000 a year to start, because it's so saturated. It's I get his solution, hey, stop caring so much about college education. I get it, but college education isn't useless. It's just so saturated with individuals, and the curriculum's also saturated, where people are just constantly. The curriculum is so saturated where you're just constantly building on top of things. And it's a little silly. It's oh, hey, why don't you take gym classes? For what? To be a teacher? Why the hell do I need to take a gym class? Stuff like that.
We do not look at your college education when you come into the office because we don't think that that's a good gauge of whether you will be a good employee or not.
It is, to an extent. If you can get through college with good grades, it means that you have a level of self-discipline. It means you're more, you're better at a particular thing. You know what I mean? There's a difference between saying, hey, we're going to value experience more, and saying, hey, we're not going to value college education. Because if I had somebody came in and had 4 years of, let's say it's a writing job, they had 4 years of writing and it was good, versus another person who had a 4-year degree in writing, I would definitely consider the person with actual experience. But that doesn't mean that if I had some schlub off the street with nothing going on versus a college graduate, that I'm going to take the schlub,
Other ways of doing it. There are also laws that are on the books that are very stupid that ban people from giving sort of employment tests, sort of a quasi-SAT for employment. And those laws are very dumb because, honestly, what it causes people to do is go participate in what we call credentialing, right? They will go and they will get a degree just to prove that they have a high IQ, as opposed to if we just knew that you had a high IQ, you wouldn't have to spend 4 years getting the degree. So on
I
a
don't
going
know.
forward basis,
I just want to say, I don't know about any law like that. If that's true, it is rather ridiculous.
A ground shifting idea on how we deal with college. We should be encouraging people to use online education. We should be encouraging people to major in the hard sciences as opposed to majoring in the liberal arts.
I agree.
And we should be encouraging people to take on apprenticeships as opposed to going to college in the first place. Okay.
Yeah, no, I agree with all those. I agree with all those things, actually. That makes a lot of sense. I think that we need to do that. He's effectively just saying we need to get them young and we need to shift them in a particular direction because those science degrees are more necessary, they're more valuable, they pay better.
Now, as to the people who have racked up student loan debt, and they did so, 10 years ago, 5 years ago, and they're not paying it back properly, I mean, the answer there is that typically the amount that you are paying on your student loan debt, you can carry for quite a while before you start getting hit with major charges. I know this because I did carry student loan debt for a while, and the interest rate was very, very low for probably the first 10 years that the student loan debt existed. I think that, unfortunately, if you take out a loan, you're responsible for the loan. And I don't think that the government should be bailing out major corporations. I don't think that the government should be bailing out Wall Street. I don't think the government should be bailing out individuals.
No, you can't. The problem I have, what he's just saying is he's trying to say, like, government shouldn't bail anybody out. If the government didn't bail out businesses in the coronavirus, we'd be f***ed. If the government didn't bail out the Wall Street crisis, we'd be f***ed. The problem isn't bailouts. The problem is lack of accountability. If the government's going to bail out Wall Street, they should have been held accountable, which they weren't. All right? The government should hold people accountable for the bailout. There's a difference between bailing out student loans and then still expecting just like an easier, more lenient payback method, while also addressing the issue of too much cost to go to college. There's a difference between that, and there's a difference between that and just being like, let's give them free money. The free money issue is always a problem. And so, like, you can't do that because, like, based on his solution, the economy would have crashed by now. Like, if we applied that logic to everything, the economy would have been screwed. So he's just like, he's just saying, it's like, I believe this. And then, like, but it's impractical, and you know that. That's an impractical opinion.
Take out loans to go to college. It's the going forward problem, I think, that is more telling. I think as far as people who are in current debt crisis right now, if you have a prospect of good employment coming up, there are going to be people who are able to consolidate loans. Some of them advertise on this program. I just don't, I fundamentally disagree with the idea that if you take out a loan for something and then it doesn't pay off for you, that it's the responsibility of society to assume the cost of the loan.
No, but that's a very simplified view. First of all, though, I want to say, like, did he just suggest consolidating your loan? Like, is that his solution? It's like, well, you might have a $40,000 student loan debt for 2 years, but just consolidate it. 1-800-consolidate my loans. Is that your capitalist solution to the problem? Also, like, you're being very vague about it. It's not like people just, like, went for something and, like, they failed. It's that they went for something that was overpriced, thinking that they were going to be able to get a job, which you addressed before, and then they don't, and they can't get that money, and then they get screwed out of the system, and they get pushed back down. And, like, so you're putting, I understand that there's always personal responsibility, but you're putting way too much into that personal responsibility. You're not contextualizing the situation. So,
Okay. I don't know how much time we got, but are you for public education from K through 12?
Why didn't this guy, like, say something about it? It's like, hey, I guess, I don't.
So I'm for localized public education if a local community wishes to undertake it. I'm not for federally subsidized public education. And I think that the idea of having laws that basically require that parents educate their children is another way of going about that. Meaning that you have to enroll your kid in a school, you have to make sure that your kids have a baseline of education.
I think we're talking about just K through 12 right now, I think he said, just for context for you guys.
Otherwise, you are participating in the dereliction of your children. But making it so that we have to have the federal government run federal education has been a complete fail from beginning to end. It also neglects the...
First and foremost, I think that, like, what he's saying, that it's a failure is... Well, yeah, no, he has a good point with the... Common Core has been a failure. Things like Head Start have been proven to work, though I would say that they're not worth the cost. I share a similar perspective to him when it comes to this, where we should leave it to the states. I don't like federal educational programs because I think states know better their area. Some states don't need a lot of education in order to keep their infrastructure, their economic infrastructure alive and well. And that's why I talk about it a lot, universal basic income. Because I think that's a better way to promote opportunity and then allow people in those particular areas to increase their value and then say, you know what, we have more income now. Let's make our schools better. I don't like federal federal governmented. I'm like skipping through my words. I don't like federal government mandated education for that reason.
The fact that the real problem in education, and no one will talk about this, of course, but the real problem in education typically is not a problem of underfunded schools. It is typically a problem of parent strategy and inability of parents to make sure that their kids are able to get a proper education. Tossing money at our public schools isn't going to fix that.
And what? That's so general. So what is that? Why did you say it like that? You were so vague. Like if based on me listening to you and consuming your content, what I would extract from that is that like it's parents' faults for their kids not going to school and having high dropout rates. And like that's just now we're getting into a complex idea of like just poorer areas not, having like a worse culture of not caring about their education because they don't care because they're never going to find an opportunity because their area doesn't have enough economic infrastructure. You get what we kind of go into this like cyclical thing. That's not necessarily the fault of the parent. It's the fault of a culture generated through a failure of the government to police poverty the right way.
And federalizing it isn't going to fix that. Billy, I really appreciate the call.
But no, like federalizing, not not making it a federal issue when it comes to schools. That won't solve it. But like some kind of a federal wealth redistribution, like universal basic income, will. I'm such a liberal.
Sanjit in Atlanta, Georgia, you're on the Ben Shapiro Show. Go for it, Sanjit.
Wait a minute, Ben. I thought you said this was just about the conservative solution to the student loan debt crisis. Now you're padding your 5-minute video.
Ben, I just want to say I'm super huge.
And I'm gonna do the
fan
same
of your
thing.
show, and thank you for everything that you do. So a major thing.
He looks so defeated. He's like, oh, bro, I hear it every time. Stop telling me you like my show. It's boring. Just get to the freaking solution.
That I have
question.
The issue in a way is that every single time I try to use like a lot of the stats that you use, such as like from the Brookings Institute, like the 3 ways that you can. There's a 98% chance you're not in poverty, etc. Whatever it may be, any sort of like facts over feelings debate. It's basically like all my friends will always take the emotional appeal and say that I'm being insensitive because I don't understand everyone's individual situation.
I'm laughing because like. I like Ben. I like Ben Shapiro. I think he's a smart guy. I think that he forces a particular narrative, like a lot of people do. But I think he's smart, and I get it. But this idea that just because you use particular evidence means that like you're factually correct is very laughable to me. Because like let's be honest here, Ben doesn't always use factual evidence. He does kind of rapid fire talk at you in a way that gets you to like think he's correct because your brain doesn't have enough time to process the information that it's getting. Yeah, and also, like, emotions are part of life, man. Life isn't purely factual. Life is also emotional. If, like, there are levels of truth, like, not understanding a particular person's experience. You need to contextualize logic and emotion.
Or I'm, like, generalizing. And basically they'll say, like, I'm coming from a privileged point of view. And
that I hate. I hate the, oh, you're so privileged. Shut up. I hate that. It's such a dismissal of somebody's argument without actually making an argument. I'll give him that, honestly. Because, like, I hate that. It's like, oh, you're privileged. Well, like, you're not discussing what I'm saying. You're just dismissing me based on the perceived privilege that you think I have. Which I may have, but still. Go after what I'm saying.
I don't really know how to respond to that sometimes because I personally think that America, out of any other country, has the most opportunities, and there's the less, like, it's...
No, I don't think that's necessarily true. I love America. I think it's the greatest country in the world, but I don't know about it having the best opportunities. It has the best opportunity to potentially become a millionaire for nothing. Like, it's the American dream is like a 1 in a million get-rich-quick scheme. If you think that's opportunity, I would rather not have that opportunity, but then also just everybody has, like, just a little bit better off. But, sure.
The country that has the least external barriers. And I don't, maybe I might be privileged, and I know for sure my parents aren't. So, like, how do I really respond to that and kind of talk about the economic mobility and how the fact that people can actually, work their way up regardless of circumstances from a more emotional appeal.
Right. So Sanjit, I think that
Sanjit, I just want to tell you, bud, that not everybody can just work their way up. Like, we definitely need to reverse the victimization of people saying, I can't do it, when they clearly can. But, like, there are situations. Every time you're missing something out of the traditional life, you're screwing yourself. If you live below like the average wage. Honestly, if you live below an average household income of $74,000 a year, you're gonna have a harder time existing, because that's like the cutoff to where happiness ends. That's like the average. I think something like $75,000, and then you're not like then it's like diminishing returns on your wealth, and of course it depends on your state. If you're below that, you have an issue. If you have one less parent, you have an issue. If you have additional brothers and sisters, you have an issue. It's economic stressors. If you live in a poor area, you have an issue. There's a myriad of things that could really halt your opportunity, and like you could just live in an area without like economic infrastructure. So,
I think that the answer there is that you have to start off with the basic premise, and the basic premise is: are we allowed to have a conversation that is apart from empathy? Meaning that, are we allowed to is this conversation about me empathizing with
No, you're not. You're never allowed to have a conversation where you don't allow empathy to be involved, because now you're asking me to not be a person when we talk. There's a difference between being logically focused and like just pure logic. Empathy is a factor, and it needs to be a factor, and it needs to be contextualized and understood in order to promote growth. I don't understand. You can't dismiss empathy. That's very silly. If you dismiss empathy, then why are you pro-life? Your entire argument is empathetic. So, like, you're empathizing with an unborn child. So how is it that you're going to sit here and you're going to say you need to have a conversation that's not empathy, with no empathy in it, and then just completely apply a different logical rule set, or even illogical rule set, to another one of your beliefs?
Problems, or is this a problem, or is this a conversation about solutions? I've said on the program many times, I actually have this deal with my own wife, right? In marriage, very often what happens is that you're talking to your spouse, and your spouse just wants you to hear them. Right? They just want to explain what their emotions are, and instead you're like, yeah, here's a solution. They get angrier at you when you propose a solution, because what they actually want you to do is empathize. Well, I actually have a deal.
No, what they want you to do is listen to them. Like, that's a problem in a lot of relationships. People they want to be problem solvers, and sometimes people just need to vent. Sometimes people don't want you to solve their problems; they just want to be able to vent, process. But this is very different from having a conversation with your wife. This is like the delicate intricacies of capitalism.
Deal with my wife, which is, I will say to her at the beginning of a conversation, do you want me to empathize with you, or do you want me to help you solve the problem?
Ben, I think you need like relationship advice, dude, because like you're very passive aggressive. When your wife's like really angry today, and you're like, listen, honey, do you want me to listen to you and respond, or do you want to just talk into my ear? Can I shut off? That's a little rough. Yeah, I feel bad for your wife, Ben. Come on, man. Got to be a little bit more empathetic, man. You need a little more emotional intelligence, is what I would say.
And she'll, to her credit, give me an actual answer to that. So
yeah, to her credit, she's like, in her head, she's like, I know how to do this guy, this freaking guy I married. She probably loves you, and he probably loves her, of course. But like, this freaking guy I married, like, he's kind of a dick, and he's just like, but that's just how he is. I love him. That's how she probably thinks. I like their marriage a lot. The fantasy that I just came up with, I like it a lot.
When it comes to political conversation, we have to start from the premise that this isn't about empathy. This is about solving the problem. So,
but empathy is like a problem. If we weren't empathetic, we just don't have to care about poor people. I solved the problem. Without empathy as a factor, nothing is wrong. Nothing's wrong. If empathy is not a factor when it comes to politics and when it comes to society, then everything is fine. We're good. Everything's good. Poor people, they don't matter. Actually, I'm good. We're done. We're done with the conversation, guys. I'll see you later. We're out of here. We're done. We had a conversation. Right? That's what he's saying. We're finished. Empathy is a massive factor in everything. You can't just say no. You can't remove empathy from life. You can't remove emotions from this. That's very silly.
Empathize with your position. Full empathy. I feel bad for you. I'm sorry that you've had to deal with what you've had to go through. Like, my heart really goes out to you. That doesn't...
No, it doesn't. You don't care. You just establish. You don't give a shit about empathy. Get out.
Solve the problem. So now let's talk about solving the problem. Because what the dumbest point of view here is that politics is motivated by empathy. That's not true. Okay, political solutions are not motivated by level of empathy. You can be the least empathetic person in the world, and if you offer a better political solution, it's a better political solution. The logic should stand on its own.
No, I'm very confused. The logic needs to contextualize the empathy. Like I said, being more logically oriented is different from lacking empathy. I'm not sure what the hell he's talking about. Like, how do you solve poverty without empathy?
It's not the most caring person who ought to be president. It's the person who actually knows how to solve a problem.
Yeah, but the person who knows how to solve the problem is going to be somebody who's more logically driven, but understands emotions and understands, that different people come from different places with different opportunities.
You don't look for the most empathetic plumber. Right? If you
what the hell are you
call up
talking
a plumber, And you said, yeah, my pipes are clogged and the toilet's backing up. And he was like, God, I feel so bad for you. That's just awful. Like, it's really terrible for you, isn't it? You're like, what the hell? Like, you're a plumber. What are you...
What are you talking about? You're a plumber. You don't need empathy. Bro, you want to know what happened? I had my pipes blow one weekend, and it was like a holiday weekend, and I called the plumber, and he's like, damn, that sucks. I'm actually going to come fix it. I'm with my family right now. How is that not... How is the empathy irrelevant? I couldn't take a dump, and this guy was like, I'm going to come here, and I'm going to help you. The plumber needs empathy because we're humans. He sat down. He said, "My general idea is I'm not going to go out there because this is it's on holiday." And he's like, "You know what? This guy needs to take a poopy. I'm going to go out there, spend an hour or so doing it. We're all happy." That's what. So yeah, plumbers need empathy in that solution, in that context. And by the way, a non-empathetic plumber is basically kind of a bad guy. He's kind of a dick. So it's like, do I want to hire a rude boy? No, I want to hire a nice guy. Capitalism, like the whole foundations of capitalism when it comes to customer service is like, hey, be really nice. That's why when you go to like a Chinese restaurant, they don't care about you because that's not part of their culture. By the way, I prefer that because like I'm just trying to get in and get out. I don't want to be your friend. I just want to get my food. But like you get my point, you know?
I don't need your empathy. I need you to come over here and unclog the pipe. When you're talking politics, empathy is virtually never supremely useful. It is useful in politicking, but
it's useful in general.
Not useful in finding political solutions, and that
just
has to be made clear
damn
at the
point.
outset of the conversation. Sanjit, really appreciate the call.
Wait, what?
So
There's no point there? You just can't be a guy. You just can't be a human. Why don't we just have robots?
In Fort Lauderdale, Florida, you're on the Ben Shapiro Show. Go for it, Tad.
Hi, Ben. Hey, I just have a question for you. Very, very discouraged to see the division in America and the political maneuvering of the radical.
I prefer multiplication in America.
Left, and it's clear the Democrats don't have a sane candidate. I wanted to know what your thoughts are if.
How old is this video? I'm not trying to be that guy, but like, do we think that Republicans have a sane candidate? Because I agree, but like, this is like, Democrats are so dumb. It's like, bro, no offense, but like, Trump Biden, I think that they have very equal brain power. Even if you think that like Biden's worse, like, do you think that Trump is good? Come on, it's a little rough.
Democrats were to win and keep the House, maybe even take the Senate. And then the other question I have is, do you think that this trend towards the left will continue with younger generations? I continue to be disillusioned by what I see amongst the millennials, and I'm...
Well, just fundamentally speaking, every new generation will be more progressive to an extent. That's why I talk about how I'm a new age conservative. I know that in 10 years my perspective is going to be very conservative. Because I'm not going to falter. I'm not going to really fold. I'm not going to soften up too much. I might soften up a little bit, but I'll stay relatively conservative, and it'll be more my ideas now that are considered progressive will turn more conservative as everyone shifts more to the left. So, like, come on, you got to keep that in context, my man.
I'm hoping that we have a brighter future with some sanity.
You know, Tad, I've seen some conflicting statistics in terms of the last question. I've seen some conflicting statistics on whether young people will grow out of the sort of ridiculous socialistic insanity that they've bought into. Some of that
what is
delayed.
What is the ideas that are bad?
Because people are living in their parents' houses longer, they're getting married later, they're paying taxes later. Right? So that maybe there's just a longer delay effect, but...
You know what's funny about that? Can I just explain to you what he just said and why it's so silly? Because the reason why younger kids now are staying at home longer and going to school later and having kids later is because of the lack of financial opportunity in America. So ironically, by implementing better fiscal opportunities and redistributing wealth more, you'll see younger generations move out of their house. You'll see younger people moving out of their house younger and working sooner and having better jobs faster and a better, happier economy. Honestly. And to add to that, not for nothing, but the later a woman has a baby, the more likely you are to have a birth defect for that child. So, like, effectively what we're doing by promoting a culture that makes people have kids later is we're actually advocating, to an extent, or we're promoting more disabilities in young children. I'm not even kidding. Look it up. Look up the difference between having a kid when you're 20 and a kid when you're 30 as a woman. Same thing with obesity rates. The more obese a woman is, or more is the higher chance that they're going to have that the baby's going to have a birth defect. And again, a lot of people stress eat, and so reducing that stress, honestly, giving people an outlet for their stress and reducing that overall stress, giving them more time to actually focus on their health, it will it's cheaper in that context. Honestly, like if you really think about it, I know that was a little deep, but you know, just something to think about.
It's sort of hard to see a radical shift happening among millennials. Although if the left pushes too far, failure does have a way of drawing blowback. Right, in Great Britain,
I'll blow out your back.
had moved very far to the left in the aftermath of World War II, and then there was a complete collapse of the economy in the 1970s, and that's how Margaret Thatcher ends up as president. Ronald Reagan ends up as president after 2 decades of radical leftism from the federal government. So there can be a backlash to failure. As far as the...
I always talk about making sure we take the right step before we make a step, so I agree kind of with the fundamentals of what he's saying.
Concern about the divisions between Democrats and Republicans and what happens if Democrats win the House and the Senate, well, then disaster sets in. I think that the first thing that Democrats probably do is they move toward some version of more nationalized health care. I think they probably are able to cobble together the votes or something along
those lines.
But what's
wrong with that?
A Medicare for all option, right? The sort of Pete Buttigieg version of Medicare
That's a
for
great
all,
idea.
which in effect, the public option bankrupts the private sector.
No,
that is the goal of the public option.
But no. First of all, let's talk about how Pete Buttigieg's version of Medicare for all effectively is this. What it does is it allows for a public option for you to opt into. So it would increase taxes, and then it would cause you to be able to... It would increase taxes for everybody, obviously, based on your tax bracket. And then what it would do is that if you wanted to opt into it, you could opt into it on top of that based on your wages. So right now, I pay $95 a week for my insurance. Absolutely asinine and insane. Part of that's because of Obamacare. Coming onto this option, this other option, maybe it'll be worse, sure. I don't need great insurance, so I'll go on a worse option. My option already sucks. I pay a $30 copay, $70 if I go to a specialist. I don't give a shit. I'm fine. $250 if I go to the hospital, minimum. So I'm on it. Let's do it, right? It's going to be more costly. Will it bankrupt the private sector? Maybe, but it's a slow phase out. One of two things will happen if we open up. We don't eradicate it because it's a system shock if you just completely overturn the current healthcare. You open up a public option. One of two things will happen. One, the private sector will say, "Wow, we're really screwing people really, really bad. This option is cheaper for people, and they prefer it. So why don't we provide a better service that's cheaper and offers more?" Or they'll rethink it. They'll say, "Okay, what we'll do instead is we'll offer some kind of a supplemental plan where you go onto Medicare for all, and then hey, $20 a month, and your insurance is a little bit better. Boom." You understand what I'm saying? Or they'll be phased out as people lose trust and understand that the public sector is better in this capacity in healthcare. So it's applying competition to effectively a monopoly on the market. Health insurers are awful, man. It's brutal. I pay $95 a week, and you know what I do? I go to the doctor. I'm diabetic, so I get metformin. So what am I saving? $60 every 3 months? Whoa! Come on. I would much rather pay more money and know that the additional costs that I'm paying are going to poor people. That'll give them a standing on one of the things I always say is when you being a progressive means you don't have to care about the homeless. I know it sounds harsh, but if I advocate and I can get through Medicare for all in some capacity or some kind of single payer system based on your wages, and I can get a UBI in there, I don't have to care if you're homeless because my tax dollars are doing it. Charity is very much inferior to proper implementation of policy. So, again, who cares if the private sector gets bankrupt? As long as it's just a nice progressive swap.
First place, and then continues to draw taxpayer dollars and centralize it. I think you will see a dramatic shift in foreign policy. And
again, just to that point, if you go on a private insurer and it sucks, and then all of a sudden you jump on a public option, you didn't get anything for being on that private option. At the very least, if you jump onto a public option and you're paying more than you need, at least other people on that public option are benefiting to some capacity. Though that might be a weak point.
A dramatic downgrading of the United States military, which has happened for every Democratic president.
But that's, listen, I know a lot of you guys don't particularly care for Obama. Specifically on his foreign relations, Obama was doing a pretty good job de-escalating, and it made it so he didn't have to spend so much on the military. Trump came in, he basically aggravated the crap out of a lot of people in the world, and then we needed more of a global presence, which means we needed to implement more tax dollars going into a military that already is hundreds of billions of dollars. I love the military, but theoretically, we should be reducing it as much as possible, as long as it's properly effective. And I think Obama was doing that. Like with the deal with Iran, nothing was perfect, but Iran was upholding their end of the deal. It was de-escalation. We didn't have to spend so much on from a foreign perspective. And now with a Republican president, and I'm not anti-Republican, but one of the problems is we're always escalating issues when we come in and saying, like, let's do this war, let's do this. And like, what if we just chilled, right? And we made it so that we could police the world with as little money as possible that would still allow us to be effective, and then we could maybe take some of that money and put it into ourselves. Imagine that. I don't believe in cuts for the military, but like we could stagnate the amount of money that we invest in the military. Like, okay, let's just not give an increase for a while. And Obama was being effective on that specifically.
It's all of this is deeply troubling. Radically higher taxes. Every single Democrat has proposed radically higher taxes.
Like who?
And those taxes will have to.
Like what? Radically? In what capacity? Because you just before you said that we're gonna pay for like the student loan debt crisis. I disagree with like Elizabeth Warren and Bernie Sanders, but they weren't going to increase taxes for middle class. They were going to implement a short-term Wall Street tax. So like you're being very disingenuous. You've already established that you're not very educated on the taxes that they're proposing, and now all of a sudden you're an expert.
Drip down to the middle class because there's no way to grab the money from the rich people only. So yeah, I mean, all of this is scary, Tad, and it's why the radicalization of the Democratic Party is bad. It's why I keep saying that all the people rooting for Bernie Sanders to be the nominee, don't do it. Don't root for Bernie Sanders to be the nominee because that's an awful risk you're taking.
Yeah, I don't think it's awful. I'm happy that he didn't get it. Kind of. I mean, his ideas are a bit too radical for the United States, but come on.
Right.
Yeah.
Like if Bernie Sanders is the president, I'm not sure that's worth the risk of him being the candidate. So, Tad, really appreciate the call. We'll take more of your calls in just a moment at 855-236-3228. First, let me explain to you something about me.
Oh, no.
I'm a unique fellow.
Oh, no. What is this?
That means that I need a unique mattress, and I have supremely comfortable.
I'm not watching this thing here.
This is one. It's so good. Excellent deal. Try Helix.
Is this the rest of
Alex in Houston, you're on the bed.
Okay.
No problem. Right now, Helix is offering up to.
Oh yeah, so it's an advertisement for a bed. What the hell are you doing?
Deal. Get up to $200 off at Helix.
I don't care.
To $200 off. /Shapiro. On the Ben Shapiro Show. Go for it, Alex.
Hey Ben, so long-time listener, recent subscriber.
We're back.
But I was wondering, it seems like every week or so you come out with this new disastrous story about California. So outside of a catastrophic event, someone dumping a bucket of hot feces on Dr. Shapiro's head or your kid stepping on exposed needle, how bad would things in California have to get before you start looking up houses in Texas?
Who says I haven't been looking up houses in Texas, my man? I mean,
this is it? This is the question?
Zillow. I mean, I will tell you, there are other areas...
He just did it. He plugged Zillow, guys. I'm using that, by the way, to find a house also, or an apartment. But
the United States that do not have a 13.3% top tax rate and have open feces on the street. So...
What would you prefer, Ben? Closed feces? Got him. I just destroyed this freaking cuck. Got him! End stream.
I will say that the draw of California is not strong enough to justify the way that the state is run. And I will say that in all candor, it is not going to take much more to drive me from this state. I mean, in reality. So I can't. I mean,
like,
if this
not for nothing, but like I might leave this state if it gets yuckier. You probably live in like a nice area because you make a lot of money being disingenuous. So
state continues along this path. I cannot imagine I'm living here 5 to 10 years from now. I just can't imagine it.
Why
it's
not?
Almost impossible to imagine that being the case.
Well, that makes sense, guys, because remember, Ben Shapiro, if your situation stinks, then you just pick up and move. It's possible. Everybody can do it. You can just leave, and everything's fine. Although he's going to leave California with that has expensive housing and go to a less expensive area, and then he's taking that less expensive house from somebody who could actually afford it. So, just based on that.
Alex, I appreciate.
Yeah, I just remember it.
Yeah, sorry, go for it.
Yes, sir.
I just remember the real question.
During the backstage live, God King, lowercase b, lowercase k, boring, said that they were staying in California because they do their best work from behind enemy lines or whatever.
Yeah, no, I mean, that is the best excuse to be here. Even that excuse starts to look a lot less nice when there's a homeless person on every single bench in the city where I grew up, and open needles, as you mentioned, on the street where my children play. So all that tends to go by the wayside. Plus, I think that we can be fairly solid conservatives. I mean, I've spent 35 years behind enemy lines. That seems like a lot to learn about the left. All right, appreciate the call. Jeremy in Michigan, you're on the Ben Shapiro Show.
Jeremy, don't be so boring. This is for the last call. Don't do it.
I was wondering how we could
I was wondering about your mattresses.
incorporate constitutional principles into education to better educate the public to see when, you know, they're trying to move the lever of, let's say, like public safety to override a right.
What the hell is he
or
talking
to
about?
overcome it or to restrict it beyond what they're supposed to.
Well, Jeremy, I appreciate the call. I think that when it comes to, invoking constitutional principles and teaching them, I will admit I do have a book coming out. It is all about the foundations of the United States, what it will take to unify us, and what those foundational principles are. That's coming out in July, so take a look out on Amazon for it. We'll probably be in pre-release.
Let's just establish that we've got an ad for a mattress, we had an ad for Zillow, and now we have an ad for a book. What the hell are you doing, bro? By the way, buy my shirts. Hypocrite.
Fairly soon. Jeremy, really appreciate the call. Christian.
What? That wasn't even an answer. You know why he didn't answer that? Because if he answered some kind of a regulation on, like, actually upholding constitutional rights, then he would have to defend protesters.
To Utah, you're on the Ben Shapiro Show. Go for it, Christian.
Hi, Ben. Thanks for having me on.
Sure.
Me too. Hi, Ben.
So my question here is, given the legalization of same-sex marriage and your position that the government should just get out of marriage entirely, which I personally agree with, do you think that the state has a business in continuing to make polygamy illegal, polygamy being the multi...
This is relevant for me. Ben, answer this question, please. I'm happy I watched.
Consenting adults.
So I actually believe that the government should stay out. The government effectively does stay out of this now. I mean, if you think that people aren't living in polyamory right now, they are, right?
No, but I want the benefits, Ben!
Having people legalize that by contract,
Get it?
It seems to me having the government approve it is horrible. I don't think the government should be approving it and treating it as marriage. But then again, I don't think that the government should be approving and treating as marriage same-sex marriage, right? I was against the government approval of same-sex marriage. I think the government should be entirely out of this business altogether.
Wait a minute,
I don't think that the government has any role to play when it comes to
Wait a minute, Ben. I have a little bit of an issue here. I'm going to explain to you why. I'm going to blow all your minds, guys. So Ben Shapiro's perspective in this instance is that the government should stay out in general. Now, I know he's specifically targeting polygamists or polyamory and gay people, but he keeps reinforcing the idea that the government should stay out of marriage completely. That means the government will not provide tax incentives for same-sex, or rather, what do you want to say, normal? I don't want to say normal. Straight couples. Why did that take so long to come to me? So, based on that, what he's effectively saying is if we remove those tax benefits, though, there won't really be much of a reinforcer for the typical nuclear family, Ben. So now you're just kind of going against your whole narrative, which is you should contribute to the nuclear family, because I hear you say it all the time, and it's one of the biggest reasons you say on why people fail for not upholding the nuclear family. So, like, how do you get to that point? Why not? You can't just... Because basically what he's trying to do is he's trying to say, like, I'm not really that homophobic, because I think the government should stay out of all marriage, but also I like the tax benefits of it, but gay people shouldn't get it. And he's walking around saying that. And it's like, you want to know my opinion on gay marriage? Since it is... I don't care about marriage in general, but since there are benefits from a governmental perspective, then yeah, you should be entitled to it regardless. Who cares? But now, what's stopping us from doing some kind of polygamy thing? I would love it. I have 2 girlfriends, and I could have 2 wives, and I should be able to get tax incentives because I'm an alpha male. Now if we give tax incentives to polygamy, I'm an alpha male. You're gonna promote alpha genetics spreading. Well, actually, maybe not, because, like, honestly, if you guys see like polyamorous couples are disgusting. Like, I effectively have like 2 monogamous relationships, but like traditional polyamory is so gross. I don't even say traditional, but like you see these guys, it's all people with like weird colored hair. And it's like, oh, look, I'm in bed with 7 people. Why? Yucky. What are you doing? I don't know. Maybe I'm being too judgmental. But you get my point. Gotcha, Ben! Forgot to add that at the end of my point.
Marriage, or talking about how people should live together. I think it's the government's role to ensure that we don't hurt each other. I don't think it's the government's role to play sort of moral imprimatur for particular activity. I think that is the job of your church and your neighborhood. So
I'm so confused now. So what you're saying is it's not the government's job to regulate morals. So then you are for gay marriage? At least the benefits of it? I'm so confused, Ben. It's not an attractive face I posed, Sorry, bud.
I mean, first of all, as we say, like right now it is not illegal. Right now, if you go down to your local weird church and you have them marry all 7 of you, you're not going to be prosecuted for that in any state in the union. It's when you try to file a joint tax return you got a problem. Obviously, Christian.
Let me
really
file
appreciate
the joint
the call.
tax return.
Alrighty, coming up, we'll take more.
By the way, as we get hit with more economic stressors, more people are going to turn to polyamory. It's. I'm not even kidding. Like that's. You're going to see people like generally less happy in relationships because like they have less money, and then you're going to see more people living together more because it's cheaper to live with multiple people. Haha, I got you, Ben. But think like that, Ben, because you put that yarmulke on your head and it takes all the freaking alien brainwaves get repelled. I got the alien brainwaves hidden in my head. All right, let's see if he has doesn't know.
Calls at 855-236-3228. You're listening
plug something,
to the Ben Shapiro Show.
Oh, he didn't plug